And good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday, September 2nd, 2017 edition of Auto Talk. I am your host, Ed Welsh, and for the rest of this hour, we'll be discussing matters that are of pertinence to you and your automobile. As always, we hope to impart to you some useful automotive information and perhaps have a little automotive conversation this morning on this beautiful Saturday morning, unlike some parts of the country when it comes to weather. But there's definitely a chill in the air, which that means the summer season is going to end very soon. But we still got some nice days left, and I hope you get out to enjoy some of them. But, of course, as we roll into September, it's quite natural. Everyone realizes it's back to school time. And if you've been into any of the retail establishments of late, you've seen parents out there and gathering up notebooks and school supplies and all the things that you do when it gets get your kids ready for school. And you can see some of the kids with the dead dog look on their face, knowing that summer is over, and they hang their heads. And there's a bunch of kids very excited to go to school. And that's normally what happens. But those of us who get behind the wheel of the car every day, well, we need to be a little vigilant, especially during the morning and afternoon hours when kids are walking to and getting home from school. And, of course, they get on and off the school buses. Over the last decade, about 1 in 4 child pedestrian fatalities occurs between 3 and 6 p.m. I'm not sure you know that or did know that, but I wanted to share that with you this morning because that's a pretty big number. And, of course, a lot of that has to do with school time. Now, obviously, we've been going for the whole summer without seeing a whole lot of school buses. And I think what happens, especially in the summertime, it's darker later, so people tend to stay outside longer. And, so maybe you get up a little later in the morning and, you don't have to get up too early. The kids don't have to go to school. There's all kinds of stuff like that going on. And I think a lot of people hurry themselves to get to work, so they start cutting the time a little short, so to speak. And, of course, what happens next week is if you do that, well, school buses are going to be all over the place. And, of course, some of the buses might have some new routes. The kids, of course, might be walking some new routes to get to the bus. And the next thing you know, we've got a problem because you're in a hurry to get to work and the school bus is on the road. And the other problem is kids themselves. Children are easily distracted, especially around other kids. And as you get to the beginning of the year, when you've got new routines being formed, maybe they haven't seen their friends for a while. Again, the excitement of everything. Kids are kids. They run around. And, of course, they're smaller and less visible to motorists. And they may be unable to accurately judge traffic situations because if you think about a kid, their peripheral vision is about 1/3 narrower than yours or mine because they're smaller. And again, it's really for us to mind what's going on. Kids are not adults. So really it's up to drivers to compensate for the differences between children and kids and recognize what kids do. And we need to focus solely on the act of driving. Again, having a heightened sense of awareness around children and following recommendations will help keep everybody safe on the road. So I want to go over a bunch of stuff, and you already know most of this, but you know what? We like to share it every year as a reminder, and maybe some people don't remember some of these things. So first thing to remember is you have to slow down near schools and school zones and residential areas. If you're driving through neighborhoods, well, that's where the kids are going to be, and that's where they line up to get on the bus. Remember that school zone speed limits are in place to save lives, and those are enforced by law enforcement. A pedestrian, for example, that is struck at a vehicle traveling at 25 miles an hour is nearly 2/3 less likely to be killed compared to a pedestrian struck by a vehicle traveling just 10 miles an hour faster. So in other words, again, you don't want to ever hit anybody, but if you hit somebody 25 miles an hour, they have basically a 2/3 chance of making it rather than you hitting them at 35 miles an hour. And again, that's why school zones are like 15 miles an hour You can stop faster if something happens, but also if heaven forbid you get into some type of accident, the consequences of that accident may be lessened. And of course, again, we've talked about driving cautiously in school zones, around playgrounds and school buses. And I think everyone's well aware of making sure they stop for school buses that are unloading or loading children. One of the other things that we have to pay attention to is our distractions behind the wheel. And we talk about it quite a bit. But at this time of the year, you've got to be hypersensitive to what's around your environment. So again, if you take your eyes off the road for just 2 seconds, that doubles your chance of crashing. And, of course, kids are deceptively quick. Did you ever try to catch one? It's like trying to catch a chicken in the yard. Kids are quick. And what makes them really dangerous around cars is they can just bolt out between two parked cars without a moment's notice, and you may not even see them. So what you really have to do is be very, very defensive in your driving and pay attention, especially the first few weeks of school. You should always pay attention, but when everybody's getting into new routines and you're seeing the buses out there and the environment's changing from what it was just last week, really everybody's got to get used to things. It's kind of like getting your sea legs on a boat. You really want to get used to the fact that kids are out there, the buses are out there, and you want to make sure that you're paying closer attention. Another issue is reversing responsibly. Every vehicle has blind spots, and what you want to do is make sure that the kids on the sidewalk coming by your house are not behind your car when you zoom backwards in the driveway. One of the things you really want to do is teach your children not to play in or around vehicles, and for them themselves to pay attention to cars coming out of driveways. Again, sometimes kids will do what you tell them, but make them aware that, hey, they've got an important part to play when it comes to safety, especially their own. Another thing that we talk about is stopping at a stop sign. AAA has found that more than 1/3 of us roll through stop signs in school zones or neighborhoods. I've done it. I try not to, but I'm guilty of it, and I'm sure you are as well. And when you come to a stop sign, do you really stop and say 1, 2, 3, and then move? Well, that's what you should do, but many of us don't because we kind of roll through the stop sign. Well, not a smart thing to do with this time of the year, especially with kids being around in front of the day, the front end of the day and the back end of the day when they're getting out of school or going to school. So again, you want to check carefully for kids at crosswalks before proceeding. Another challenge we face are bicycles.